I thought I should have retitled this talk to try and make the insight more obvious. And what the title of the talk should be is, read these 10 books and you'll get promoted faster and end up with far more senior position. So I gave a short course at in Florida a week ago, the Australian Institute of Management. And the first challenge we gave to the group there was a course on strategy and problem solving. And the first challenge we gave to the group was, how do you get promoted? We got lots and lots of answers and ideas. And basically it comes down to three things. You do your job really well. Right? You upskill and you network. So on the networking one, join AMPAA. Jonas has got the forms. What we'll learn in the next 13 slides I'll show you is some of the upskilling in the non-technical field, so away from the tools, more in that management field. I hesitate to use the term, I won't use the term soft skills, because sometimes people talk about leadership and management tools or skills as the soft skills of people management. That label's become outdated, partly because learning how to do all this stuff is not easy. It's really, really hard. And some of the techniques to do it are extremely structured. So not really all soft stuff. Right? Anyway, so remember I started off with how to get promoted, three things. Do your job really well, upskill, network. I use that as an example for a reason. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about 10 books. And if you read these books, you'll get promoted. But it's not these books, right? So this is my 10 worth selling books, plus 3 edited books written by the MBAs at UWA. But I like books. What I'm going to show you, though, is 10 books that are far better than these books, that I genuinely believe, if you read them, will get good career outcomes for you. Now, a little bit of audience participation. When I put up the book, if you've heard of the book, I want you to put your hand up. If you've read the book, I want you to put both hands up and wave them around. Okay? So we'll see how we go, right? First one, pyramid principle. Well, we've got a couple of readers and a thing, but a minority, vast minority. Now, this is not a top 10 ranked list 1 to 10. All of these books are equally brilliant, and I'd recommend them all. Right. What I described to you when I said, how do you get promoted? Do your job well, upskill, network, is a cracking example of a pyramid principle communication structure. So the book was written by Barbara Minto, 1978, and it's McKinsey do this with fervor. It's almost the sort of the book to read. If and when you join McKinsey, you have to read this book. Let me give you an example of it. When I was lucky enough to work at McKinsey for a couple of years, you don't get an office, you just get a little cubicle when you're in the sort of McKinsey offices. You spend most of your time at the clients. But when you're back in your little cubicle, you can hear what everybody else is doing. There's this sort of open plan cubicle. People at McKinsey would re-record voicemail messages to each other multiple times before hitting the send button, because they wanted to get it in perfect pyramid principle format and really short and tight. So, you know, when you pick up your voice messages and, like, you know, somebody talks, they're still going and still going for 30 seconds, 45 seconds a minute, you know. In the McKinsey world, the voice message should be like that. So that's pyramid principle. I'm going to depart from that now, because much as it's great for board level and senior management communication, it's not much fun socially, right? You know, so storytelling is a little bit more fun. So I'll allow myself to tell a few little stories. So there's book number 1. Book number 2, we're not quite sure if you can read it. You can text on the red background. What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School. It's another book from the 1970s. Mark McCormack was the first professional sports agent. You know, every sports person now has got their agent that sort of does the commercial deals for you. In the 70s, that was totally new. So Mark McCormack was the first person to be a professional sports agent. This is absolute gold dust. Let me give you a little example. Let's say that you wanted to talk to somebody in Sydney or meet with somebody in Sydney, a particular mining company that you're quite interested in getting a job with, but you're in Perth. Face-to-face contact is still, much as the brilliance of Teams and Zoom, face-to-face contact is still where it's sort of at, right? Yeah. What Mark McCormack's advice would be is you phone them up and you say, oh, I'm going to be over in Sydney next week. I'm passing through your suburb or whatever. Any chance you're free for a meeting, you know, on either Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, something. And if the answer is no, sorry, we're booked up, fine. If the answer is, oh, yes, we can do that, that's great. Let us know when you're through. You weren't even going to Sydney next week, but you say that you were going to go to Sydney next week. So these little tricks of the trade are all in the book. Absolute gold dust. And you probably don't get that. Maybe you do. Great title, though. You probably don't get that at Harvard Business School. You certainly didn't get it at Oxford in our MBA there. You do get it in the UWA MBA, though. So that's being tactically smart. Also, it's good to be nice. So sorry, I didn't go for the. How many hands have heard of this book before? How many have read it? Well done. This one, more hands, surely. Lots, a bit of waving and some hands, great. Dale Carnegie, think 1937, but maybe off. So we're really doing the modern stuff, aren't we? We've done a couple of books from the 70s and we're doing a 1937. This is a little bit like the Mark McCormack book, but with an extra slice of nice. One of the pieces of advice in the book is never criticize, condemn, or complain. That's in there. There's a pro forma in the book that's almost a letter that you write to someone when you've got to give them really tough news, like, I'm sorry you haven't been promoted, or I'm sorry you haven't got the contract. It's almost a pro forma letter. This predates ChatGPT that could probably do that for you now. Okay. All right, good. So I'm serious. You read Pyramid Principle and really understand it and live it. Things that don't teach you at Harvard Business School gives you all little tricks of the trade. And this stuff is almost, I don't have a psychology degree, but to me, at least, it's sort of, it borders on around applied psychology. And there's a few other books on the list along those lines, of which this is one. So hands up for Adam Grant, Give and Take. I think you're about great reading there in the back. Is that, I can't, my eyesight's not that bad. Is that Moses? Well done, Moses. So Adam Grant's Give and Take. Now, in the wonderful social media world we live in now, of course, if you count YouTube as social media, you can watch the 15-minute version of this rather than read the 250-page book, right? So I would encourage doing that. Adam Grant is a professor at Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania, which interestingly is famed for its finance expertise, but Adam is more on the psychology side. It's pretty much what it says in the can. He says there's only three types of people. There are givers, there are takers, and there are matchers. Matchers are the people like, if you do something for me, I'll do something for you. It's this, you know, that's a matcher. Right? A taker is pretty much what it says on the can. They're trying to get more out of everyone else than they're willing to put in. Right? And a giver's the other way around, where they're willing to give of themselves a lot to help everybody else, not expecting as much back. Now, the question for you, as soon as we're on the promotions theme, who does the best in their careers? How many people for the takers? A couple of votes there. A couple of, nobody really wants to vote for the takers, do they? But there's a few hands go up for the takers. How many for the givers? Okay. How many for the matches? Okay, good. So the givers and the matches about even. Nobody wants to vote for the takers. First 10 years of the career, takers, way in the lead. Way in the lead. Next 10 years, they get found out by the matchers, because the matchers are the matching police and they don't like to have anybody not paying them back for the effort they put them in. So the matchers are like the police. Where do you think the givers end up? What if I told you that the givers are, we come on to statistics now, and hopefully, statistically, the givers, if we split this outcomes into quartiles and populations in different quartiles, and we say, where are most of the givers? And they're actually, interestingly, in the top quartile and the bottom quartile. Right? So there's two types of givers. There are people that are really, really efficient at giving. So drop me an email, I'll make a connection for you, I'll put you in touch with a couple of other people. That really helps you. That's taken me 2 minutes. That's efficient giving. The inefficient givers are the people that do everyone else's work for them to their own detriment. So they finish down here, efficient givers at the top. Right? So beautiful piece of work. Definitely worth a read, certainly worth a look at the YouTube. Okay. All right. Now, hands. This is predictably irrational Dan O'Reilly. Any hands? Couple of hands? Any waves? No waves. If I change this to Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, how many have we got? Some waving for Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow? So Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize in the behavioral economics space, and his sort of best-selling book is Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. Quite thick, certainly in hardback. A little bit dry, I would say. Dan O'Reilly's in the same behavioral economics space, not quite as eminent in terms of Nobel Prize, but this is much more fun as a read. And it really just goes into what we all know about behavioral economics now, but you need to know about behavioral economics, which is all the heuristics and biases that either help us or hinder us as we go through our career. So when we hear about things like the anchoring bias, you think, oh, God, that sounds pretty boring, the anchoring bias. But there's some smart ways you can use the anchoring bias. So if you want to get a pay rise, use the anchoring bias. So let's say you get paid as badly as academics, and let's say you get paid as bad as you get 120 grand a year for doing whatever it is, and you want 150. Right? And you're going to have, at some point, you're going to have an awkward conversation with your boss about this. The trick for anchoring bias is to mention the number 150 totally out of context, as much as offers as you can with your boss. So, I don't know if there's any cricket fans in the room, you might say something like, no, oh, did you see Steve Smith did really well the other night? He almost got 150. And what about that salary negotiation we're going to have? You've anchored your boss at 150. Our brains are absolutely crazy. Another little example of this one, can't quite see the practical use of it, but I'm sure you guys might be able to work it out. Students are usually used as guinea pigs for various things, and so that they're typically sent in to do some form of survey when really what they're being tested for is not the survey at all, right? So an example will be send a bunch of students in to do a word associations test, and you give a certain set of students old words, aged care facility, wheelchair, what do they call those things that help you up down the stairs, or all this sort of, grey hair, thick glasses, all that sort of stuff, right? Old words. You give another control group of students young words, play group, cuddly toys, whatever it is, right? And then you say, thank you very much for doing that survey. You can go and collect your $50 for doing that survey. You're just going to walk over to the building over there, see the chap at reception, and you get your $50. The real test is what they're doing is they're measuring the walking time of the people that have done the old words survey and the new words, the young words survey. Guess what they get? People that have done the old words survey walk slowly. People that have done the young words survey bound across to get their $50. So understanding the whole behavioral economics stuff is fantastic. Loads and loads of these sorts of examples in here. Useful for, even if you don't want to get a pay rise, for other things as well. Dan Ariely's book, I think at least would be this century, put it that way. So that helps, right? Because behavioral economics didn't really sort of emerge until the sort of 1990s. But now we're going to go back a long way. So there's a lot of operations people that I've been chatting to at the breaks and engineers and the like. So how many people have heard of the Principles of Scientific Management by F.W. Taylor? Got any hands for this one? 1911. No waves. Just one has 1911. Means you can probably get it free now because it's be off copyright by now, right? Okay. This was the father of time and motion. This was the time and motion stuff that effectively fed into, I know, the Ford assembly plant was slightly before 1911, but it's the same process as the Ford assembly plant. So this was operational efficiency 100 years ago, and it's exceptional. They didn't treat the workers very well there, so when you read the book, it's not very sensitive to the rights of workers. But the statistic that I recall from it was that the blast furnace steel plants, whether it was US Steel or Bethlehem Steel, productivity tons per hour went from something like 17.5 tons to 47 tons per hour using the techniques of F.W. Taylor. So you've got to read this stuff. If you're working on operations, you want to know this sort of stuff, right? It's 2 generations back from lean, but it's really good stuff. Here's a question. I know Jonas has been giving out prizes. I'll give out the mints as well for this one. With one of the questions, Wendy, don't give this away in the MBA class, but one of the questions we sometimes ask the MBAs is, how many hours are there in the year? Everybody happen to know that without looking it up? We've got engineers in the room. How many hours are there in a year? You know? I can't do the mental maths. I just happen to remember 8,760. So time and motion is always, it's all about the time domain and the rate domain. So it's almost like a data analytics type space. Most people can usually analyze the time domain. They struggle in the rate domain. But you start off with 8,760. So mining engineers that worked on how do I get more dirt into my trucks or how do I reduce downtime, usually bang out 8,760. Anyway, that's first generation operations excellence. Second generation operations excellence, 1984, not the book, the year here. Eli Goldratt's The Goal. How many hands for The Goal? And no waves? You guys are in for a treat. This is an absolutely brilliant book. It's sort of written by Jeff Cox that sort of told the story of it. The fun of this one is it's a novel. It's a business novel. So Goldratt was the academic. He's an Israeli. He's passed away now, unfortunately. He's the academic. He got someone that was actually used to writing novels to help him write the book. I won't give it away too much, but I'll just set you the scene at the opening of the book. It's set in a US Midwest widget factory of some sort that's losing money. And the sort of main character in the protagonist in the book is the plant manager. So this is losing money. The interstate general manager flies in and says, you've got 3 months to turn this place around, otherwise we're closing you down. Not a good day, that, you know. As the interstate general manager walks through the plant, he has an argument with the foreman, and the foreman throws a spanner into the biggest piece of automated gear that they've got, and the sparks fly everywhere, and the thing shuts down. Plant manager, the day's not getting any better. Plant manager goes home. He finds a note from his wife. Says, you've been working 16 hours a day for the last 6 months. I'm taking the kids. When you get your life back in order and you're only not working so hard, I'll come back. That's the start of the book. And without giving too much away, there's a happy ending. Using all of the tools of operational improvement phase 2. So you had time and motion, operations excellence. This is what's called the theory of constraints that you might have heard of. Effectively, it's bottleneck theory. I love it when you go in operation. When I used to work at the super pit in Kalgoorlie, you'd go around all the different layers of management and you'd say, where's the bottleneck in the operation? And it's great fun to, you can't, it's a consulting trick, isn't it? You can't go wrong. If they tell you where it is, you say, great, good. If they can't tell you where it is, that's a great finding too. So, you know, and usually if you ask the different departments, you get different answers, right? Actually, at the time that the super was quite a nicely balanced operation. That's a good thing. Yeah, the bottleneck can move. Right. So that's worth a read. This is a Goldratt again. This is what Goldratt did for operations management was the last book. This is what Goldratt did for project management. It was just tearing up the rule book on project management and rewriting it. And again, in the form of a business novel. So it's just fantastic stuff to read. There's a concept in here called student syndrome he talks about, and that resonates with the MBAs at UWA. That's if you've got 7 weeks to actually do something, and it's going to take you about a week to do it, MBAs won't start until end of week 6. Right? And so they immediately put themselves on the critical path where they shouldn't. So they should avoid student syndrome, right? So there's all these little tricks in this particular book. Again, I didn't call for hands, but I'm guessing that one's a little bit more obscure. Goldratt's famous book is The Goal. This one's one of his second album, Syndrome. I didn't quite get the praise. Now, why do management consultants get paid so well? Or at least the firms do. I'm not sure that the consultants necessarily always do. The partners perhaps get paid very well. And it's for this that the management consultants are not in the business of consulting. They're actually in the business of problem solving. And so problem solving is an absolute skill set. And there's a certain way that consultants always do it. So BCG, Bain, McKinsey approach it in the same way. Luckily, 2 former McKinsey directors have given it away in a great book that was written about 2019. So the bulletproof problem solving, the one skill that changes everything. You learn how to do this, and you'll get all those promotions we just talked about. And the fun is you can double up here, because how do you do it? Part of it is primary principle. And part of it's hypothesis testing, as we call it, right? We have a hypothesis trees. And you can watch YouTubes of those. They're not quite as exciting as Adam Grant, but anyway. Read the book. All the UWA MBAs have to read this. And this is what they basically teach all of the consultants at McKinsey. And that's why they get paid so much, is they can solve problems. And the final one, this is the last one. Co-opetition, which is a crash together competition and cooperation. Any hands for co-opetition? Right, no waves? Okay, so The Economist just covered co-opetition a couple of years ago during COVID on its 25th anniversary of publication. So it came out, this book would have come out about 1996 or so. I always forget which way around. I think Nailbrough it's made a squillion, but he's an academic, because it's a rarity. One's from Yale and one's from Harvard, right? I think Nailbrough was Yale and Brandenburger was Harvard. And it's game theory, but without all the maths, right? So it's game theory in business. Game theory is everywhere. I gave a course on strategy some years ago, got a phone call from, I went into the whole game theory piece, got a phone call the next week from an engineer who said, thanks, Alan, you just made me $30,000 last week because I used one of the tricks that you said in the course. And I said, oh, which one was that? And he said, and so about tendering, because tendering is a form of game theory, and he happened to work for a mining services provider. So one of the principal rules of game theory is never create competition for free. And when you put in a tender for something, you're creating competition for the client. And if you're not being paid to do that, or not getting any form of compensation to do that, you're creating competition for free. So what the gentleman that came on the course said, he knew that the particular mine was tendering for whatever services. He knew that the corporate requirement was to get at least 3 quotes. He said, you want me to quote on that job? I need 30 grand to do the work to be able to quote on it. So he got his 30 grand, a paid tender, right? So one of the things in this book is there are 7 ways to get paid to play. So again, there's a bit of self-interest in here. You can work your way through. It's not easy, because it's a game, but there are 7 ways to get paid to play. And then they say, and the 8th is cash. Right, so there's all these little tricks of the trade. So I'd recommend the game theory example to you there. So if you read those 10 books, you'll get promoted.